Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This week, inshallah, we are continuing from the miraculousness of the Quran, the 25th word of the Risale-i Nur Collection. Last week we started, it was like an introduction, and we talked about the definition of the Quran. And we said that the Quran has many different miracles, like from the point of word order and its eloquence, conciseness, and its style, expression, and its clarity, and also from its meanings. There are so many other parts of the Quran's miraculousness. And inshallah, today we will first start talking about the time Quran was revealed and how, from that aspect, how it's a miracle. Inshallah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. First aspect, it possesses miraculousness, and its miraculousness exists for the following reasons. The great majority of the people of the Arabian Peninsula at the time were illiterate. Due to this, rather than in writing, they preserved the sources of their pride, historical events, and stories, encouraging good morality by means of poetry and eloquence. Due to the attraction of poetry and eloquence, meaningful sayings would remain in people's memories and be passed down the generations. In consequence of this innate need, therefore, the goods most in demand in the immaterial market of that people were eloquence and fine speech. A tribe's poet or orator was like its greatest national hero. It was he who was their greatest source of pride. Thus, among the peoples of the world, the eloquence and rhetoric of that intelligent people, who, due to their intelligence, ruled the world after the establishment of Islam, was at the highest and most advanced degree. It was the thing most highly prized among them that they felt greatest need of and was their cause of pride. They attached such value to eloquence that two tribes would do battle at the word of a poet or orator, and they would make peace at his word. They even wrote in gold on the walls of the Kaaba the 7 qasidas of the 7 poets, called the Al-Mu'allaqat Sab'a, and took great pride in them. It was at such a time when eloquence was thus most sought after that the Quran was revealed. Just as at the time of Musa alayhi salam, Moses, peace be upon him, it was magic that was most sought after. And at the time of Isa alayhi salam, Jesus, peace be upon him, it was medicine. The most important of their miracles were in those fields. The Quran, therefore, invited the Arabian orators of that time to reply to even one of the shortest of the surahs, one of the shortest of the chapters. It challenged.
Sorry to interrupt, Brother Ömer. I need to say something in here. In here it says, miracle like Musa alayhi salatu wasalam had, and Isa, Jesus had. Ustad doesn't mention, but it's so obvious that there is a rhetoric miracle that Quran has. It doesn't says Messenger Muhammad had, but we need to understand that Quran has this miracle. So I just needed to mention this. Thank you.
Quran's miracles. Inshallah, let me read it again. The Quran, as you said. Yes, Colin Hocam, any comments?
Are you finished?
If you want, we can talk.
No, sorry, I coughed. Sorry, I should have had I should have been muted. But if you finished, the brother who came in there was talking about miraculousness, and maybe we need to prefix our discussion with just a little bit on what this miraculousness, what do we mean by miraculousness? And if you go in through the 25th words, you will see that the two main facets or pillars upon which Nursi builds his discourse on the Quran are the eloquence, the balagha of the divine revelation. So balagha is eloquence, and what Nursi describes as its innate comprehensiveness, jami'iyah. So the Quran is very eloquent, and it's also very comprehensive. And in his understanding, and in the understanding of similar scholars, both of these characteristics are at the level of inimitability. And this miraculousness, the English word which is usually used is inimitability or i'jaz. And it's derived from the Arabic triliteral root ayn je ze, which means to be unable, to be incapable. So the word i'jaz signifies the perceived inability of any human mind to create a literary work which is able to match the Quran in terms of both its eloquence and its comprehensiveness, while at the same time alluding to its perceived miraculousness. There's no human work that can do this. The Arabic verbal noun mu'jiza, which we get from the same root as i'jaz, is translated traditionally as miracle. In actual fact, what it denotes is anything which cannot be imitated, and which leaves those who witness it in no doubt that not only is it out of the ordinary, but it's also totally beyond the capacity of any human being to bring it into existence. And so the miracles, the mu'jizat, which were affected through the medium of the prophets in the Quran, the evidentiary miracles, fall into this category. So we have a whole list of different miracles that the prophets were able to effect. They were mu'jizat because no one could actually match them. No one could actually replicate that. It was out of the ordinary completely, and it was beyond the capacity of any human being to bring it into existence. So the Quran itself is an example of a mu'jiza, thanks to its i'jaz, and it possesses i'jaz in all of its literary characteristics. It is inimitable, uncopyable. It cannot be replicated. And you've just read there how Nursi explains why Muhammad's most compelling evidentiary miracle, as-salatu was-salam, came in the form that it did. And you mentioned that Musa, the thing that was priced most highly was magic. And so his most important miracles resembled magic, but clearly it wasn't magic, it was mu'jiza. At the time of Isa alayhi salam, medicine was prevalent, and therefore Hazrat Isa's miracles were in the field of medicine. At the time of our Prophet, as-salatu was-salam, there were several things, as you've mentioned, which were very, very highly prized. Eloquence was one of them, so balagha. Then there was poetry and oratory. Then there was soothsaying and telling the future, understanding the unseen, divining matters which we can't normally understand, and history and cosmology. And in all of these different areas, the Quran posed a challenge. The Quran proved to be a mu'jiza. It could not be beaten. It could not be replicated. And even those who were against the Quran and who weren't believers, they bowed down before the eloquence of the Quran, before its comprehensiveness, before its literary inimitability. So the brother who interrupted, maybe he did a very good thing, because he drew our attention to this notion of mu'jiza and the root of that word as well, which is i'jaz.
Yeah, one of our speakers, Mehmet Su from brother Mehmet Su from New Jersey, he also mentioned the Quran was the miracle. Yani, we know that at the time of Isa alayhi salam, medicine was prevalent, but Isa alayhi salam did not study medicine. And Musa alayhi salam never studied magic too. So, but the fact that they demonstrated that shows that it's not their own ability, right? It's clearly shows that it's from Allah, miracle. And Mehmet Abi also mentioned the same in the Quran. It's the miracle of the Quran, miracle from Allah, that even our prophet did not know how to read and write, but the fact that he came up with such a great book.
What I meant, I need to add more, if you don't mind. I know our time is limited. Those people who were against our prophet, they could communicate with our prophet, and there was a communicator. There was the Uncle Abu Bakr who were trying to make agreement between those two different sides, but our Prophet ﷺ was not the one they were trying to deal with. Quran was the one destroyed their pride. That's why they were against Quran. So this is what I meant was this actually. Quran has this miracle by itself. I know and I accept our messenger brought it. It revealed to him, but still, Quran has this miracle. Thank you.
Inshallah. So you mean that our prophet, they had no problem with our prophet, right? Even they called him Muhammadul Amin, the trustworthy
Absolutely,
one.
till he reached, till he claimed that he was a prophet, and they had no issue with him, and they really trusted him like no other person at that time. But when Quran was revealed and destroyed their pride, they start being enemy to our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Yeah, also when you mentioned pride, and I read here, like it was the eloquence, the rhetoric, the eloquence was their source of their pride, and with the Quran, it's as if their pride was destroyed, as you said, mashallah.
Yeah, when I was a child, I used to think that I can make a sentence like an ayat or surah. I was thinking childish, but when I learned these uncountable miracles that Quran has, I stopped thinking like that ever again, because we will read them, but there are uncountable miracles that Quran itself has. Our Prophet has miracles too, but they were about agricultural products and water. But Quran has uncountable miracles.
Inshallah, we will. Inshallah, in this 25th, there are many aspects of it. Today, if we have time, inshallah, we will mention one ayah. And let me read the rest of the part, inshallah, in this introduction. The Quran, therefore, invited the Arabian orators of that time to reply to even one of the shortest of the surahs. It challenged them with the decree of, and if you are in doubt about what we have revealed to our servants, then produce a surah resembling it. This is an ayah from Surah Al-Baqarah. استعوذ بالله وإن كنتم في ريب مما نزلنا على عبدنا فأتوا بسورة من مثله. And if you are in doubt about what we have revealed to our servants, then produce a surah resembling it. It also said, if you do not believe, you shall be damned and shall go to hell. It provoked them intensely. It smashed their pride in fearsome manner. It was contemptuous of their arrogant minds. It condemned them firstly to eternal extinction, and then to eternal extinction in hell, as well as to worldly extinction. It said, either dispute me, or you and your property shall perish. If it had been possible to dispute the Quran, is it at all possible that while there was an easy solution like disputing it with 1 or 2 lines and nullifying the claim, they should have chosen the most dangerous and most difficult, the way of war? Yes, is it at all possible that that clever people, that politically minded nation, who at one time were to govern the world through politics, should have abandoned the shortest, easiest, and most light way, and chosen the most dangerous, which was going to cast their lives and all their property into peril? For if their literary figures had been able to dispute it with a few words, the Quran would have given up its claim, and they would have been saved from material and moral disaster. Whereas they chose a perilous, lengthy road like war, that means it was not possible to dispute in by word, it was impossible. So they were compelled to fight it with swords. It was not possible to dispute in by words. It was impossible, so they were compelled to fight it with the sword. Not possible by words, so they had to fight with the sword. Colin Hajam, any comments so far?
Not really. It's clear that they weren't able to match the Quran, but I think people have misunderstood this challenge. You know, as Said Nursi himself points out, there are 2 main schools of thought with regard to this challenge that the Quran poses. And he says that the prevailing school is the one which says that the eloquence and the meaning of the Quran are so inimitable that they are beyond human power. There is a second school, and he says it's the less preferred school, which says that it is within human ability to dispute the Quran's chapters, but God has prevented this as a miracle. Now, the Arab scholars themselves had different opinions with regard to the issue of Ijaz and in regard to this Quranic challenge. This school of thought that Said Nursi is talking about, which he describes as the less preferred, it's founded on the notion of dissuasion or sarfa. And proponents of sarfa say that while Arabs actually possess the ability to meet this challenge, God has, in effect, dissuaded them from rising to it by averting their hearts. Said Nursi says this is not really the preferred school. The most prevalent of the 2 schools is the one which says that the Quranic style and the techniques of the Quran are totally distinct from anything which can be found in the oral and written discourses of human beings at that time, you know, such as poetry, prose, or oratory, or at any time, actually. And even though the Arabs of that period had extremely high levels of linguistic and rhetorical excellence, the production of anything even resembling slightly the Quran was totally beyond their capability. Because although the Quran talks about bringing one verse, what people don't take into account is that that verse has intimate and intricate connections with all of the verses around it, and by extension, with the rest of the book itself. Not only does it have connections with the other verses, it is part of a whole, and that whole has been responsible for changing a whole civilization. So if you are going to bring something which matches the Quran, it's not just in the field of eloquence and rhetoric that you need to match it. You need to match its historical reputation. You need to be able to produce something that is inimitable on every level, but at the same time is part of a greater whole, you know, which is a completely coherent and self-contained whole, which is responsible for changing paradigms and for bringing into existence a civilization which has lasted for 1400 years. That is what you have to do. It's not just about matching the words, the stylistics, or the matching the word order or the syntax. It's not just about that. You have to produce something which is miraculous on so many different levels.
Mm. So, for example, as we mentioned last week, so for example, the Quran being like a training people's minds, hearts, and educating them from those aspects too, right? And
absolutely, you have to produce something which can then go on to be part of a coherent text that is capable of interpreting the universe, that is capable of acting as a translator of the tongues of divine unity, which is capable of explaining the hidden realms, the unseen realms. It has to be cosmological, it has to be theological, it has to be liturgical, it has to be all of these things that the Quran is. So it's not just about bringing, and a lot of people have tried to do it, in mockery as well as in admiration. They've tried to bring verses which they think replicates the Quranic rhythm and the Quranic the vibes that we get from a verse of the Quran. But they haven't been able to do it. Whatever they've produced has, from a literary point of view, been very anodyne and very unremarkable, and it hasn't possessed any kind of inimitability at all. They have to produce something inimitable, but their efforts can be replicated because their efforts are very workaday, they're very everyday, they're very unremarkable, they're very ordinary. They don't have any kind of divine spark in them at all. So I'm afraid that the two schools that we talked about, it's not because we are able to match the Quran, but God prevents us. It's because we're not able to match the Quran. And do you know why? We're not able to match the Quran because it's divine speech.
Mm.
And we don't have divine speech. Our speech is created by the divine, but it's not divine in the sense that the Quranic speech is divine.
Right.
So, Colin abi, can we say that those people who claim that humankind can bring imitation to Quran, they think that they own their own, they own the attributes of God?
Yes, they think that they think that they have sovereignty and agency, They think that they own their own language. They think that they own their own logic, There is no such thing as human logic. There is only one system of logic, and that is the divine system. There is only one language, actually, and that is divine language. Our language is a reflection of divine language. It is not direct divine language. Divine language in our mouths has been corrupted by the interference and the interpolation of the human nafs, of the human soul. That's why our language, we can say that it's a reflection of divine language. We can speak the language of the Quran, but it's not divine in the sense of being directly revealed and untouched by any kind of human interference or interaction. So I think that people who talk about this claim don't really understand it very well.
Even at this time, we, Mehmet, before inshallah, last week also we mentioned this, the Quran, for example, in the universe, like the scientists cannot make, for example, a fruit, a vegetable, Actually, we have all the elements at our fingerprints, like you have the elements, but you cannot get them together, and you cannot think about everything and make something like a living being, like a cell, even of an apple. The cell of an apple, we cannot make it. It's like divine. You need divine power, divine knowledge, and you need to think about everything to be able to, make something like apple. And in divine speech, in the Quran, every letter, every word is, placed in such a way it's connected to everything. It's like a living being, right? Mehmet, any comments on this?
Absolutely. For example, in Qiyamah Surah 26, it says, not every words, every letters we're choosing specifically. So, for example, Qa sound, Qaf, we know, and people who are about to die in their beds, they generally makes this sound. And in Surah 26, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, they all ends with qaf sound. So this example shows that human knowledge, wisdom cannot reach to divine level. So whoever revealed this Quran decided this way. So human level cannot reach that. And even Fatiha, it says Sirat al-Mustaqim, not Tariq al-Mustaqim. Tariq means also way or path, but Sirat is singular. There is no plural version of Sirat. And for example, Wahid is first one. There is two, there is three in Arabic, but Ahad is only one. There is no plural version of Ahad two. So to sum up, we need to say that, like Colin Abi said, divine knowledge, wisdom revealed that book. So humankind, no matter what that second school claims, humankind cannot reach that level. So Quran by itself, it has, in my opinion, uncountable miracles. Thank you.
Even, the example you gave from Surah Al-Qiyamah, right? When people are about to die, they become like as if they are drowning. And the ayats that you mentioned, like يَقِيلَ مَنْ رَاقُ, and then فِرَاقُ, بِسَاقُ, مَسَاقُ, like they all end with this. It's as if drowning, as if dying out of shortness of breath. Like even the sounds of the Quran, of the letters and attributes of the letters are, in the word order, those kinds of miracles, mashallah.
Thank you for helping me with that. Absolutely. Doctors or people who witnessed people die, they generally say that we heard this sound. So absolutely, you're right. I mean, God describes the psychological feelings of people who are about to die. And one by one, at the end, Quran says, this is your off day. You're going to return to God. That's a relieving sentence that someone can hear. Really, really good. But it's only in Arabic. When you translate to another language, it doesn't give you same meaning.
I didn't make the connection between the qah sound of the dying and the verse and the surah that you mentioned. Does it talk about death?
Yeah, actually, it's about in Surah Al-Qiyamah, the people. كَلَّا إِذَا بَلَغَتِ التَّرَاقِي وَقِيلَ مَنْ رَاقٍ, the people. It talks about those 5 ayats talking about the people who die.
Right.
Even,
okay.
Yeah. The people
Okay.
who are
I
about
wasn't
to
sure
die.
of the connection there. And as you say, the problem is that we are studying this in English. We're reading the translations, and our scholars don't work anymore on the balagha of the Quran or on the miraculousness of the Quran, because we don't have any scholars working on literature. All our scholars are working on fiqh, so we don't have any literature scholars. We don't have any scholars who are versed in balagha, in rhetoric, in oratory, and those who are studying those subjects, they usually are studying secular literature rather than studying Quran. So unfortunately, we have to depend on our medieval scholars for these things.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you, Colin Abi, because in the dictionary of glossary of Islamic terms in the light of Risale-i Nur, and Wahid is being translated to one, and Ahad is also same, but there must be something wrong. Turkish people, when they accepted Islam, they didn't translate everything to Turkish. So they accepted the things that cannot be translated. So in our case, we need to, heaven or hell, heaven is not cheap or easy. So we cannot translate everything to English. So if we lower this level to a lowest degree, it would be lowering the value of Risale-i Nur, in my opinion. I mean, people who want to go to Jannah or heaven, they need to work hard to understand what ahad means. But if we translate them in English, it would be too easy for them. So what I'm trying to say is there are so many problems with translation. Thank you.
Also, I have, Cornelius, did you have any comments on what I mentioned? You know, people cannot make an apple, and Allah controls all the atoms, elements in it, and Allah also kind of controls the letters in the language and the Quran and the collection of the Quran, the whole of the letters and words. People cannot come up with anything like that divine speech.
Yeah, there is a slight problem here that, you know, if we are able in the future, for example, following the miracle of Isa alayhi salam, if we are able to bring the dead back to life, then, you know, will people say, oh, we've done what God does? Because as someone saying in the chat, the boundary or the pinnacle of civilizational advancement are characterized or are indicated by the miracles of the prophets. So Isa brought the dead back to life, therefore it will be possible for human beings to bring dead back to life eventually. And there's a very interesting question posed. If the Quran is the miracle of Muhammad, والسلام, does that mean that humanity, humankind, will reach the point where they can match the Quran in its miraculousness? I would say,
sorry to interrupt, but I have to ask this. Can we understand that a miracle like this, Jesus Christ, they brought people to life, they gave life to their dead heart. So maybe we should maybe it is easy to understand that we can bring belief to people who have dead hearts.
yeah, and yeah, I understand what you're saying. You can understand it literally, you can understand it metaphorically.
Yeah,
Such as when, carry on.
Sorry, go on, please. I'm sorry.
They can be understood literally or metaphorically, but the fact is that in both cases, these are done by Allah, not by us.
Absolutely.
So it doesn't really matter whether, you know, if Isa is the occasion whereby someone comes back from the dead, it's not Isa that has done this. It's not Isa that did it then. It was his miracle. And what it means is maybe one day we will all be doing the same miracles, but it won't be seen as a miracle anymore. It will be seen as something everyday and ordinary. And that's not a problem as long as we attribute it to the Creator.
Yeah, that's true. Because meeting with the true self is a heaven, is a rebirth for some people, because when they believe, not yoga or some other things, when they really believe God, they will understand everything is reflection of Him, and that's when they will feel happiness, true happiness, even in this world. And there's a ayat says, enter the heaven in this world, not you will enter, not future tense. So enter heaven in this world. So that means it is possible for some people that we can feel what heaven people feel. So without going to heaven actually and physically, maybe we can enter heaven in this world by meeting with true selves, which is God.
Mashallah, so many aspects. And I want to add one thing to the comments, like in the chat. We were talking about Isa alayhi salam's miracle, bringing that back to life, and thinking about that, it's literal. And even the narrations that Isa alayhi salam even brought a person from 1,000 years earlier. And even when Ustad mentions, when Said Nursi mentions that, you will be able to match that miracle, I think it's like, we will be able to bring a person from 1,000 years back, but it's like, for example, a person is about to die, and he's supposed to die, but with the medicine, with the advancements in the medicines Allah allowed, you cause him to live for another maybe 5-10 years, and then he's about to die, and then at that moment, like you, with another interruption, you cause him to live a little bit more.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to be against of that idea. Yeah, we will do what Jesus, Isa alayhi salam has done. So I'm not against that idea at all. I just meant metaphorically, it could be true too. I mean, physically it is true, but not everyone will be able to see it. But metaphorically, it could be true too. I said this.
Right. Jazakallah. And also in this section, I want to talk about the one, give it one example from the Quran. And I will read the last sentence, inshallah, too. Furthermore, there are two compelling reasons for the Quran being imitated. Two compelling reasons for the Quran being imitated. The first is its enemies' ambition to dispute it. The other, its friends' pleasure at imitating it. Impelled by these, millions of books in Arabic have been written, but none of them resembles the Quran. Whether learned or ignorant, whoever looks at it and at them is bound to say, the Quran does not resemble this. Not one of them has been able to imitate it. The Quran is therefore either inferior to all of them, and according to the consensus of friend and foe alike, this is completely non-valid and impossible, or the Quran is superior to all of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Because till now, no one was able to bring an imitation to it. So even that example explained that it's impossible to imitate. So, I mean, there are so many ways to understand an ayat. So when we think that we could imitate, it would be obviously wrong sentence. Childish thought.
In the chat, Colin hocam, we are talking about Isa alayhi salam bringing back that to life, and then eventually Quran being imitated at the end of time. And what do you think about, when I mentioned the Isa alayhi salam, brought a person back to life from 1,000 years back? Do you think that will ever be possible for human beings?
I don't see why it shouldn't be possible, because it won't be human beings who are doing it, though. This is why we confuse things. We talk about man-made things and God-made things. Which are the man-made things? Do human beings make anything? No. They just move things around, and they just, discover things. They don't create things.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't see what the problem is. We can now do heart operations, and they can use stem cells to create, and I'm doing the inverted comma sign, to create new organs. They can grow organs from stem cells. So is this human beings challenging God's creativity? challenging God's creatorship? Of course not. Of course not, you know. So there's no problem about confusion. Only those who are confused, only those are confused who want to be confused, you know, and who don't want to accept the reality of divine existence and contingency. You know, every human being and every atom of creation will always be contingent, and contingency is, you know, is the winner there. If we understand that everything is contingent, then even if human beings are able to create another human being from just one atom, then so what? It's not them it's not they who are doing it. This is divine creation. So I don't see a problem.
Right. You said we just move things around, right? Nothing else.
Actually,
yeah.
we are not even moving around. God moves around. We think
Yeah,
that we
precisely.
Inshallah. So if you are okay, inshallah, I want to read this example from Surah Al-Baqarah. This week, inshallah, I want to talk, and next week, inshallah, we will start giving more examples from the Quran. Inshallah, this is from Surah Al-Baqarah. The ayah, وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ. Second example, and they spend in Allah's way out of what we have bestowed on them as sustenance. وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ. The parts of this sentence point out 5 of the conditions which make almsgiving acceptable. So we will talk about each for each word of this sentence. The first condition, and each the parts of the sentence point out 5 of the conditions which make almsgiving, charity, acceptable. First condition, this is to give only so much alms as will not cause the giver to be in need of receiving alms himself. It states this condition through the division or parts signified by out of, in the words out of what? Out of what we have bestowed on them. So not all of it, but only part of it you give as charity. This is the first condition. Second condition, it is not to take from Ali and give it to Wali, but to give out of one's own property. The words we have bestowed on them as sustenance express this condition. It means give out of the sustenance that is yours. رَزَقْنَاهُمْ. We have bestowed on them as sustenance. So this is the second condition, to give from your own property. Third condition, this is not to place an obligation on the recipients. The word we, in the we have bestowed on them as sustenance, razaqna, states this condition. That is to say, I give you the sustenance. Allah says, Allah, I give you the sustenance. When you give some of my property to one of my servants, you cannot place them under an obligation. So this is the third condition. Fourth condition, you should give it to a person who will spend it on his livelihood. For alms given to those who will squander it idly is not acceptable. The word spend, yunfiqun, points to this condition. The last condition, fifth condition, this is to give in God's name. The words we bestowed on them as sustenance, razaqnahum, we bestowed on them as sustenance, states this. That is to say, the property is mine. You should give it in my name. These conditions may be extended. That is, the form almsgiving should take with goods. It may be given as learning and knowledge. It may be given as words or as acts or an advice. The word what in out of what indicates these various sorts through its generality. Furthermore, it indicates this with the sentence itself, because it's absolute and expresses generality. Thus, with the 5 conditions in this short sentence, describing almsgiving, it opens up a broad field before the mind, granting it to it through the sentence as a whole. Thus, in the sentence as a whole, the word order has many aspects. Mashallah, we talked about the miraculousness of the Quran. It's just 3 words in a sentence, but so many conditions and so many meanings in each of them. Colin Hocam, any comments in this?
Look, it's difficult for us to comment unless we all understand the rhetoric and unless we all understand the Arabic. Yeah, unless we are all familiar with the eloquence and with the syntax and with the word order, with the nazm, it's very difficult to do this in translation, to be honest. So we have to take Ustad at his word, we have to take him at face value and just believe what he's saying is true, really. Does that make any sense? I mean, we really should know the Arabic before we can start talking about the miraculousness
I definitely agree.
of word order. It's difficult to do it with translation.
Interestingly, in Qur'an in Signs of Miraculousness, also it says, and Allah could have just said, for example, وَيُؤْتُونَ الزَّكَاةَ, they just give charity, but he chose the long way. Like he added one more word. Allah didn't say وَيُؤْتُونَ الزَّكَاةَ, they give charity, but they spend out of what we have given them, right? Forming the sentence in this way, so many meanings in it, and in this word order, actually, we are talking
also
about.
there's, just as you said, 3 words, because wa doesn't count. So وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ. Sorry. Then it's just 3 words.
Yeah.
And yet to actually indicate that in English and spend out of what we have bestowed on them as sustenance, which is how many? It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 words. So there is a concision there, there's a conciseness that we don't have when we translate it in English, first of all. And all of those other subsidiary meanings that he's derived from his analysis of the sentence can be understood from the various particles that have been used in those words, the possessive, also the form of the verb that has been used, the possessive particles there. It's impossible for us to be able to express that in English. So we just have to take him, at face value for what he said and accept that, this is at the very height of concision, at the very height of conciseness. And the word order there is key.
Yeah, and the word order. Yeah. Okay. And also, again, Allah again did not say وَيُؤْتُونَ الزَّكَاةَ, they give charity, or like وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ, they spend out of what we have given them. Right? It's not like, for example, you need to give money to people. Whatever Allah gave you, you should also give it to people. So,
absolutely, I was gonna say that, Brother Omer, because in this way we understand God's names. The true giver is God, but we are giving something so that we could understand that attribute. Then we will understand that this is originally has nothing to do with me. This is a part of reflections of names. So I understand that. So when you give some other things, or when you do some other things, this is wisdom. Actually, this is a part of wisdom that I have. But this is a reflection of true wisdom. So by doing that, we will understand we are trying to experience physical world, and we are trying to understand the reflections of names. You are giving, but when you give, you will understand I am the true giver.
MashaAllah, Mehmet Abi, this made me think a lot. Yeah, as you said, in this ayah, Allah did not say, they give charity, they give money, but they spend out of what we have given them. And for example, knowledge, Allah gave you so much knowledge. And for example, when you share a little of your knowledge, like maybe 1 of the 1,000, and the people are so amazed, wow, like it's so great information, right? And you spend out of what Allah has given you. But it's not like, for example, you spend for the sake of Allah and you become a good person and go to Jannah. And if you don't spend, like you go to hell. It's not like that. As you said, we are here in this world to know Allah and his names and his reflections, right? And so when you spend a little of your knowledge with people, and the people are maybe so amazed like with that information, and then you realize that Allah has given you, thousands of time, like Allah, you recognize that when you spend a little for the sake of Allah, and you realize how much Allah has actually given you, and you understand how much Allah has given to all of his creation, and you appreciate Allah's knowledge from this sense, right? Recognizing Allah.
Absolutely. A few days ago, one guy committed the suicide in Elazığ in Turkey, and he wrote a note. Having a car and having a wife and having a house cannot be the meaning of this life. And then he committed the suicide. The point is, actually, he was a clever person to me, because he understands the meaning of this life. And I mean, he had no access to these sources, but by himself, he understands that. I mean, the point is not having so many cars, or the point is not to be rich with so many dollar bills. The point is, we are here to understand, and we are here to watch God's attributes. That's the main purpose, because angels asks God, they say, I mean, we are praising you, why you are creating a new kind. God says, I know more than you know. So the point is, we need to understand God, Marifatullah, we can say.
Marifatullah. Colin Hocam, any comments?
No, I agree with what Mehmet is saying.
There is a comment that I can read, Brother Tolga, and it's a comment about our the topic that we talked about, bringing people back to life. He says, it is even possible to give a temporary tinge of life to death. And Ustad talks about it when, Isa alayhi salam brought that back to life. And Ustad says, for people, it is even possible to give a temporary tinge of life to death, in the book words. And this is from Mu'jizat al-Anbiya, the miracles of prophets. And Tolga says, I never thought Ustad is referring to bringing death to life, literally, but it is rather a technological advancement that will convince some that they can talk to their late grandparents. Silicon Valley companies are working on constructing deep neural networks trained using traces that people leave on digital world to achieve this. GPT-3 is a good keyword to begin with for those who are interested on what this might mean. And when I was thinking about it, he says it's even possible to give a temporary tinge of life to death from our previous discussion.
Possible for Allah to do anything.
Inshallah, let's see. Thank you, Colin Hocam and Mehmet Hocam. Next week, inshallah, we will continue, as I said, from different aspects of the miraculousness of the Quran. This week we talked about the time Quran was revealed and how it's miraculous from that aspect, and we talked about we gave one example from Surah Al-Baqarah, in the word order and the meanings in it. Inshallah, next week we will continue from different aspects and we will give different examples from the Quran, inshallah. Hocam, can you make dua, inshallah, before we finish?
Inshallah, may we all have the patience and the time and the encouragement and enthusiasm to read the creation, a deep reading of the creation in order to understand what our position is in the cosmos. Inshallah.
Amen. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعواهم أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. الفاتحة.